Hello, and welcome to Meenah's Tirith, the podcast where we explore Tolkien's world and answer questions from you. My name is Meenah.
And this is Brian.
This is season 2, episode 1 of my podcast. First, I want to welcome back all my listeners from season 1 and also welcome new listeners. In today's episode, I will share my thoughts on what I liked and didn't like about season 1, what I think about season 2, and we'll also discuss the new trailer for The Rings of Power season 2.
All right, let's do it.
So, season 1 finished in October of 2022.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah, it's been a long time.
it's been 2 years. So, I started to rewatch season 1. I haven't finished. And I also pulled out all of my Tolkien books just to get ready for season 2.
Yeah, they're taking over our entire kitchen table. So that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing your homework and research because I'm a blank slate. I don't remember anything. And maybe some of our listeners are kind of like me and we need a refresher.
I'm not surprised that you don't remember, but it's okay. That's what this podcast is for. We want a range of fans to enjoy this Middle Earth world, whether this is the first time you've heard about hobbits or for those who are hardcore Tolkien fans.
Like you.
Yes, so if you weren't aware, I really like reading J.R.R. Tolkien's books. I wouldn't say I know everything, but I have a huge curiosity and love for Middle Earth.
Okay. So let's begin with this question. And you've had 2 years to think about it, right? Did you like season 1 of Rings of Power?
This is such a hard question to answer. I both like and don't like it. I like that we can explore the younger versions of the classic Lord of the Rings characters like Galadriel and Elrond. And I like that big names from Tolkien's books from the Silmarillion are in the series like Durin, Celebrimbor, and Gil-galad. And we finally get to meet these characters. And we also get to explore the worlds from the Second Age like Numenor, Eregion, Khazad-dûm, which becomes Moria later. But what I don't like about it is how Galadriel is portrayed. She's so different from the Galadriel in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy films.
Yeah, I vaguely remember you mentioning that also in season 1 of the podcast. And yeah, that's interesting.
What I also didn't like about season 1 was how disturbingly dark it was.
Mm.
For example, the orcs dig holes and dig tunnels underground, then they dig underneath the humans' homes while the humans are living like normal, regular lives, and they just snatch them. So that was like disturbing and dark and scary. Tolkien didn't write about scary things like that. I don't remember any description of orcs digging underneath and making tunnels and then kidnapping humans while they're just, out and about living their lives. It's only when humans and elves intentionally walk into the Dark Lord's territory that's when they were taken and tortured. So that makes sense to me.
Hmm. That's pretty interesting. I do remember those tunnels and regular humans disappearing, but it didn't bother me at the time when I was watching it. Actually, I don't even remember watching it that much. But so, who were the major characters from season 1?
Good question. Well, we have the young version of Galadriel, the Galadriel who has seen the light of the two trees, but she and her people have been exiled to Middle Earth. This Galadriel will eventually bear the ring of adamant, Nenya. We also have the young version of Elrond. His family is tied to Middle Earth in a unique and redemptive way. Elrond will eventually bear the ring of air, Vilya. We also have Nori, the Harfoot. She's like another curious Frodo Baggins. We have Arondir, a Sindarin elf. And let's not forget about the men and women of Numenor, the island where Elrond's brother Elros's descendants live. There's Miriel, Ar-Pharazôn, Elendil, and Isildur. Lastly, there's that stranger who has some sort of relationship to fire. He's likely a Maya or an Istari. And I talk about this in my podcast season 1.
Okay. Yep.
Maybe we'll discover who the stranger really is. Now, if he's revealed to be Gandalf, I'll honestly be really disappointed because he's not supposed to be in this storyline in Middle Earth at the same time as Sauron in the Second Age. Gandalf appears in Middle Earth after Sauron was defeated the first time and the ring was forgotten.
A lot of people think that it is Gandalf, right?
I know, yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So Gandalf, the guy who is gray and then he comes white robed. So what do you think about the new trailer for the Rings of Power season 2?
So there's a lot that the trailer reveals, but I'll focus on maybe two things.
Okay.
One is that so far in the trailer, the portrayal of Sauron is correct. Sauron was the apprentice of Aule, one of the Valar gods. Aule was skilled at crafts and making things. Sauron likely learned the art of jewel making from Aule, so he has a lot to offer to the elves of Middle Earth and the elves of Eregion, like Celebrimbor.
Mm-hmm.
And now in the trailer, he has such a beautiful appearance and he goes by the name Anatar. And this is really accurate to Tolkien's works because Sauron does become Anatar and he deceives the elves. And Sauron is a great deceiver. So Sauron or Anatar taught Celebrimbor the art of craft and making things. And this is how Celebrimbor created the Rings of Power. So I was satisfied with the portrayal of Sauron from the trailer alone. But there was a little scary and disturbing scene.
Really?
There, there is one scene where Celebrimbor looks at a mirror and suddenly sees his sort of distorted and suffering face and then turns around to Anatar and says, "What have you done to me?" I wasn't happy about this scene. Tolkien never said that the elves of Eregion were under the influence of Sauron, later like succumbing to suffering. They were deceived, yes. They had a war in Eregion, yes, but they weren't turning into orcs or something like that. So maybe I'm reading into this scene a little bit too much, but that scene bothered me.
Hmm. That's really interesting. So what else do you think the season's going to bring out?
I heard that this series will bring out Tom Bombadil, which
Hmm.
is very interesting. Tom Bombadil is someone who has lived on Middle Earth since the beginning of time. He probably has some very interesting like powers and stories, but he's just so oblivious to the concerns of Middle Earth. He just wouldn't care about the ring or Sauron or evil forces. He first appears in Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, when Frodo and the hobbits journey from the Shire to the Inn of the Prancing Pony. They go into the old forest where Tom Bombadil lives. So it's part of the journey. It's part of the journey that is, but this story is just so out of place when you think about the whole Lord of the Rings plot. And that's why it's not in the movies by Peter Jackson because it doesn't contribute much to the plot.
Wait, what do you mean? Like Tolkien should have had a purpose for him?
So I don't know if Tolkien had a purpose for Tom. Maybe Tolkien just wanted to enjoy writing a nice story of a little adventure in the forest.
Okay. So why does Tom not care about the ring or Sauron?
In the Fellowship of the Ring, Tom Bombadil doesn't have a care in the world, nor he concerns himself with the ring or any war. In fact, I think Frodo showed Tom the ring, and Tom put the ring on, but he didn't become invisible and he didn't have some kind of superpower. Eventually, later, Gandalf says that Tom would likely misplace the ring and just forget about it. But apparently, he's going to make an appearance in the Rings of Power series. So it's going to be interesting because Tolkien doesn't mention him outside of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Hmm. Okay. So it sounds like the series is stretching it, obviously, and they're bringing in some characters from Lord of the Rings, but who knows how they're going to be portrayed. So, what do you think we should expect from season 2?
Yes. Well, I think we'll find out more details of how the Rings of Power were forged. how the elves of Eregion were deceived by Sauron, how they didn't care about who he really is at the beginning, and instead were so focused on the art of making the jewels that will preserve their lives, preserve their beauty, enhance their strength. I think we're going to find out how Anatar guided the making of the Rings of Power. I also think we'll find out more about the 7 rings made for the dwarves, how the rings were forged, who they were given to, and how it changes the livelihood of the dwarves. I won't give detailed spoilers here, but according to Tolkien's books, there's torture, greed, and Sauron is involved in all of it.
Hmm.
We'll also find out about the 9 rings given to the race of men, who they were. I also know that we'll find out about how the 3 rings for the elves were forged, made, and hidden. According to Tolkien, the making of the 3 rings were hidden from Anatar. However, because the elves used the methods they learned from Anatar, those rings were also bound to Sauron in some way. Lastly, I hope we find out how Sauron makes the one ring that rules them all. What about you? What do you hope to discover or see from season 2?
Well, it's a good question. I think we need an answer to why the elves' hair is so short, Um, is it because it takes 1,000 years for their hair to grow, or is it totally out of practicality? I don't know. It's kind of hard to forge rings with hair in your face, right?
Yeah, or maybe it's for fashion.
Sure. Uh, that's odd. Okay.
Well, that's all we have for season 2, episode 1 of the podcast. We hope this piqued your interest into the world of Middle Earth and the Rings of Power.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a rating and a review.
If you have any questions for us to answer, please DM me or leave a comment on my Instagram at Meenahs_Tirith. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode. Namarie.
I still don't know what that means.